Under the bluish-white lights of the marble lobby, the barefoot boy shot forward like an arrow. Security shouted, the reception desk lurched upright. The ICU doors flew open. Expensive machines flickered, lab coats gathered into a ring. A child's voice rang out, broken by hunger and ragged breath. "Stop! You're killing her." His black eyes burned like twin streaks of fire in the sterilized air. He snatched the chart from the hands of the silver-haired woman, Elizabeth Whitmore, neurology, Harvard, so renowned her name anchored protocols. The international doctors behind her frowned in near unison. The boy hugged a fat medical book with a split spine, taped edges, pages curled like dry leaves. He panted. Rain damp still clung to his skin. "This isn't brain death," he said, oddly calm again. "She has locked-in syndrome. And for 2 weeks you've been giving her the wrong drugs." A laugh, sharp as a blade. "What's your name?" Whitmore asked. "Marcus." He lifted his gaze without blinking. "Marcus Williams." She curled a lip. "Marcus, what credentials do you have?" Marcus looked through her to the bed beyond. A 16-year-old girl, skin white as paper, lashes fine as pencil lines, lay motionless. On the wall a run of EEG waves moved evenly across like a horizon. "I have someone who died of this," Marcus said softly. "My sister." A sudden cord of silence cinched the room tight. The patient's mother stood outside the glass, fingers clamped around her wedding band, eyes reddened from lack of sleep. She breathed, almost a gasp, "It's that boy." Marcus turned. His eyes, steady, a little surprised, softened. He knew her. On a piercingly cold, rainy day, in front of the supermarket on Halstead Avenue, she had stopped to hand him a box of warm fried chicken, a bottle of water, and a look that did not judge. "Eat, honey," she'd said, placing the bag in his hands as if setting something ordinary on the world's table. He'd said thank you. She'd smiled and crossed the street, pulling her brown-haired daughter, Sophia, into an embrace. Now that same mother stood at the end of the corridor, hands trembling, but the way she looked at Marcus was the same as in the rain, no fear, no doubt, only a glint like a lifeline tossed across a river. "Let him speak," she whispered, but it wasn't a whisper. It was a command issued by the heart. "I want to hear him." Marcus grew up beneath the roar of trains on the Roosevelt Bridge, under thin blankets that smelled of damp, with a strange library, coarse books abandoned beside the med school dumpsters. His skin shone black in summer sun and turned ashen in the long winters. Under the bridge they called him Little Doc, not because he liked playing a role, but because he listened to coughs, counted breaths, pointed people toward the free clinics less likely to turn them away. And because one night, when Lily, his sister, left this world under the banner of unexplained, Marcus opened the books, opened his eyes, opened his wound wide and refused to let it close. He learned backwards, not from teachers or transcripts, but from rain-blurred lines and yellowed highlights made by some stranger who'd underlined, "Don't miss this symptom." He memorized chapters on consciousness, on perception trapped inside. On the back cover he scribbled, "Locked in, eyes may not blink, but the heart hears everything." His life drifted along like that until the day he saw the brown-haired girl's face on the news. 16-year-old falls into unexplained coma. Marcus watched the hospital clip, a rare thing to leak online, and his heart recognized an old rhythm. He shoved the book into his backpack and ran on instinct to the grandest hospital, its marble floors gleaming like a stage. Now he stood among names embroidered on white coats. "She can hear us," Marcus said, laying a hand on the bed rail, "but she can't answer." "Don't call it silence. Call it captivity." "On what do you base that?" a German physician asked. "On the little things you forgot to notice," Marcus said, pointing at the EEG printout. "Quiet oscillations, low frequency with flashes that spark and vanish. On how her heart rate shifts when voices rise. On the fact that she doesn't perform adult textbook reflexes, because an adolescent brain hasn't built the shortcuts you expect." "That's enough," Whitmore said. Her hand trembled, but her eyes stayed hard. "Security." "Wait," the mother said, stepping in. "This boy. I've fed him before." She turned to Marcus, voice thick. "Can you help?" Marcus looked at her a long time. In his eyes, gratitude wasn't a promise, it was an obligation. One hot meal had bent the arc of his life on that rainy afternoon. He nodded. "Give me 5 minutes." The room settled. The machines seemed to lower their voices, as if they too sensed something unusual was about to happen. Marcus set the battered book at the foot of the bed and leaned close to Sophia. His voice was as soft as flannel. "Sophia, I'm Marcus. If you can hear me, blink twice. It's okay if it takes time. We have time." A strip of silence, then the girl's eyelids strained against their shackles, trembled, blinked, once, twice. No one breathed. Sophia's mother cried out, clutching the rail as if afraid a breeze could blow the moment away. Dr. Kim lifted a hand to her mouth. Whitmore stepped back as though tripping over her own shadow. "That wasn't random," Marcus said. She answered. He slid his hand into Sophia's. "Squeeze if you understand, yes. Do nothing for no. 7 + 5 is 12, right?" A pressure like a leaf touching water. A squeeze. "Correct." Marcus looked up. "She wants to live," he said. "She's heard everything." Whitmore's eyes reddened. She held herself together. If we were wrong," she rasped, "what do you want us to do?" "Stop what's fogging her mind. Change how you see. Start by speaking to her as you would to someone fully awake." Marcus turned to Sophia and smiled. "You've waited long enough." Legal fears passed like a dark cloud over the administrator's brows. But inside the room people moved under a different law, conscience. Orders were rewritten. Doses reduced. Human eyes turned toward the girl, not the screen. "Where did you learn this?" Dr. Dubois asked, still watching the faint crease at the corner of Sophia's eyelid. "Where people throw knowledge away," Marcus answered, touching light points along Sophia's hand, "and on the day I lost Lily." He didn't say much about Lily. Just enough for the room to understand that some lessons should never be needed, but once you have them, they will save someone else. He didn't rattle off drug names or protocols to brag. He spoke of easing what dims awareness, of gentle stimulation, and of patience while the brain finds its path back. The night passed like that. The machines stopped arguing, the graphs stopped pretending. Near dawn, Sophia's brow knit, a movement fine as a feather filament. Then, very slowly, her index finger quivered. Her mother broke into tears, burying her face in her hands. Marcus didn't cry. He smiled the way a climber smiles when the summit edges into view. He was spent. A nurse brought him hot cocoa, setting it beside the ragged book. Marcus leaned against the wall and dozed. Someone had laid a thin blanket across his shoulders. No one knew who. The news spread like fire on dry wind. A black homeless boy had pulled a white girl back from death's door, the hospital's pride snapped by the simple beam of gratitude. People drifted in, not out of gawking curiosity but because they suddenly believed the world might tilt from small details. Morning sun poured through the windows, laying a gold sheet over the bed. Sophia opened her eyes. "Do you see me?" Mrs. Chen whispered, her hand trembling like a bird's wing. "I do," the reply came, thin and hoarse, but clear. A single word, "Mom," tolled through the room like a bell, melting 2 weeks of ice. Her mother folded over her, sobbing. Marcus stepped back, his backpack hugged to his chest, just watching. He knew the moment didn't belong to him. It belonged to 2 swimmers who had crossed a long midnight and finally touched shore. "You saved me," Sophia said to Marcus, brown eyes bright and round. "How did you know to come?" Marcus rubbed the back of his neck. "Because I owed a meal." Laughter rose through tears. The mother turned, eyes wet but smiling. "A little meal you've carried, all the way to today?" "I don't forget," Marcus said. "People think kindness can't be stored. But it's like a flame passed from hand to hand, each time you give it, it burns brighter." From the corner, Whitmore heard that small line snap a stiff twig in her chest. She'd spent her life learning how to be right. Tonight she learned how to be grateful. Truth rarely stops at a single room. The board convened an emergency meeting. Lawyers weighed words. Big names were called up and taken down. But another meeting ran alongside. No minutes, no recordings, only a promise to change. "We're forming an independent review team," the hospital director said, fingers tapping the table, this time not to intimidate but to drum in time with a heart newly returned. Priority to listening, to families, to nurses, and to perspectives beyond the profession. "Invite the boy," someone said. "The boy has a name," Dr. Kim added gently. Marcus Williams. While the upper floors debated big things, Marcus sat in the cafeteria with Mrs. Chen. On his tray, fried chicken and potato cakes, the warm remake of that rainy afternoon. "Eat, honey," she said, repeating the old line. Marcus chuckled, split a cake in half, slid it to her. "Let's eat together." They sat like mother and son, though no papers said so, though their skin was different, their stations oceans apart. The silence between them wasn't empty, it brimmed with unspoken thank yous. "Where will you go, Marcus?" she asked. "I've got more bridges to cross," he said. "But if this hospital needs someone to remind them patients are people, not printouts, I can stay for a while." She nodded. "My door and my kitchen are always open." Marcus grinned. "I'm mostly coming for the kitchen." On the third day after waking, Sophia told the doctors about 2 weeks in captivity. "Like being underwater," she said. "I could hear people, feel the weight in my chest, try to swim up but hit invisible glass." The doctor took careful notes, and for the first time in his career, he felt his charting was a privilege, not a habit. Whitmore arrived without a white coat, without heels. She sat, hands on her thighs to steady the shaking. "I'm sorry," she said to Sophia and her mother. "I forgot how to listen, and almost forgot how to be human." "You've changed," Sophia replied, as simply as a child talks about the weather. "That's enough." Whitmore turned to Marcus. "If you'll allow it, I want to learn again, from the beginning. Not the medicine in books, but the medicine in your eyes." Marcus shook his head. "I'm no teacher. I'm just someone who remembers a debt." "Then teach me how to remember debts," she said, eyes that had only ever seen illness now seeing people. A month later the hospital launched a new framework, not a statue with the boy's name, but something they called the listen and answer principle. As concise as a hot meal. Any case that fails to respond in 72 hours gets reset to the first question: who is this person? What did they feel before machines spoke for them? At least one night shift nurse, the one who notices the smallest moves, must sit at the decision table. Record every family observation with respect, not with polite dismissal. Invite a professional outsider, like Marcus, to join tough cases, not to break things, but to look from the angle few consider. Remind each other every morning, don't let the machines hide the human. Applied, these tiny changes braided into bigger ones. Pain was caught earlier, a groan was no longer noise, eyes stopped sliding past like ceiling lights. Marcus did not become someone else overnight. He still lived in a small room prepaid for 3 months by an anonymous hand. He still walked the bridges, stopped at soup stations, listened to throat rattles no one else asked about. But now, each time he knocked at a hospital door, it opened, not because the institution was riding a media storm, but because something old had made room for something new in people's chests. Once, Marcus stood in early summer rain, looking up at a third-floor window. 314 had a new nameplate. He missed Lily the way one misses the smell of sun-dried blankets, light and aching. He murmured, "Sis, I've paid back a piece." Behind him, quick footsteps glittered. Sophia called out, hair fluffy dry after illness. She handed Marcus a towel. "Don't catch a cold, little doc," she teased. "Don't call me doctor," Marcus laughed. "I'm just a messenger between two shores." "Between pride and gratitude?" Sophia asked. "Between hunger and a full belly," Marcus said, glancing toward the awning where her mother once handed him a meal. "Between one bite and one life. Sometimes they're connected by a small staircase called Eat, Honey." Sophia was quiet. Then she reached for the battered book Marcus always carried. "Want me to tape the spine?" Marcus eyed the clear tape she pulled from her bag. "Yeah. But don't seal it too neat. I like seeing the frayed edge. It reminds me what's been saved." They sat under the eave, mending the spine. Fingers sticky with tape, clumsy but persistent. Rain sprinkled the concrete like sesame seeds. "Do you regret barging into the hospital that day?" Sophia asked, eyes following the tape line rather than Marcus. "If I hadn't," Marcus said, "I'd betray my debt. And I'd betray Lily. In this life there are debts no one collects, but if you don't pay them, you owe yourself." Sophia nodded. "I owe you, too. Not just my life, though that's true, but for teaching me to trust the voice inside when the world orders silence." Marcus laughed. "Then we're even. You'll speak for people labeled mute. I'll go on listening." Another year rolled by. A newspaper made a documentary. Med schools revised curricula. Fewer patients lay sprawling under brutal misconceptions. Hot meals were still handed out on corners, without photos, without hashtags. On Saturdays, Mrs. Chen ran a community kitchen with a chalkboard sign, "If you're hungry, come in. If you're full, please wash dishes." Marcus often dropped by, washing more than he ate. He said his hands were made for soap more than forks. Sometimes wary eyes peered in from the curb. Mrs. Chen would step out with a paper bag like in the old days. "Eat, honey." In the moment the bag changed hands, something lit up, a bridge no one could see, spanning two distant banks. The receiver might forget the menu, but rarely the hand. One night, Marcus sat on the steps of an abandoned church and looked over the freshly taped book. On the last page, beneath lines blurred by rain, he added a sentence in blue ink. "Knowledge demands no diploma. Kindness demands to be repaid." He closed the book and lifted his face into a clear autumn sky. The hospital lights winked in the distance like eyes gone gentle after a long cry. Marcus slid the book into his backpack and stood. He still had a debt, not to a person, but to the meaning of a rainy day meal. That debt didn't subtract down, it multiplied each time he paid it forward. And because of that, he kept moving, toward another bridge, another door, another room where someone was being mistaken for silence. On the road he thought he heard Lily's voice in the wind, "You did well." Marcus smiled and flipped up his collar. "Not just me, Lily," he said. "All the people who fed me, believed me, gave me a place to repay." He jogged through the mist, bare feet unafraid of the cold. Somewhere ahead, a monitor would pour out waves again. Somewhere ahead, a mother would peer through glass. Somewhere ahead, a boy would say once more, "Stop. Listen to her." And right here, a hot meal still steamed. The circle closed, then opened. Because he was helped, he helped. Because of one eat, honey, there would be 1,000 live, honey.